Okay, I am shooting this live from my home office, and so excuse the casual attire, but I just want to talk to you shortly or briefly about sugar. And when I say sugar, I really have to clarify. I don't mean just white table sugar. Most of you watching this now understand that white table sugar is not the best idea. We keep it in moderation, and it causes all kinds of problems. But I'm talking about sugar just in terms of carbohydrate. So a carbohydrate is anything that will turn to glucose. And so that includes things like table sugar and crackers and refined grains, whole grains, fruits, honey, maple syrup, all these kind of things. Anything that has a carbohydrate is going to turn to sugar. Sugar's not all bad. We need carbohydrate to turn to glucose because our brain prefers glucose. But the problem is if we're always flooding our body with glucose, we never burn the fat. And fat's very efficient. So most of you out there want to know the consequences of sugars and using them improperly. So I'm going to take a moment to speak about that. So some of the most dangerous sugars are the ones you don't even know are there. But we'll start with the basics. So there's this thing called the glycemic index. Glycemic index basically is how quickly a carbohydrate will turn to sugar. And that makes more of a difference in your body than even how much sugar you're eating, in my opinion. Because there's people that eat a lot of carbohydrates, but they are whole grains, and so they digest the glucose a little bit slower, and their body's able to metabolize it because the energy is slowly being released into the bloodstream. And then there's people that eat a lot of refined high glycemic sugars, or even a small amount, but it disrupts their endocrine system, their hormones, and their metabolism even more than the person who eats a ton of these carbohydrates. So first thing we got to understand is the speed that a carbohydrate turns from carbohydrate to glucose, and that is what we call the glycemic index. So you could write that down. Google glycemic index and glycemic load, and there's tons of sites. Because of all the diabetics in our nation, we have an overabundance of information on food and how quickly they turn to sugar. So, but I'm going to be more practical here and talk to you guys about some of the things you may be getting in trouble with. So in your Club Body Restore box, if you receive that, then you'll see I put some items in there to talk about. And I put some high glycemic items and some items that are more low glycemic in terms of carbohydrate. So the high glycemic items are going to be things, well, I didn't put these in the box, but because I don't want to poison you, but those are going to be your white bread and your saltine crackers, things like that. Those are actually called maltodextrin. And if you look on the label, typically it'll say 0 grams of sugar, but then you look at total grams of carbohydrate, it might say 25, 30, 35 per serving. What we have to understand is there's no added sugar to that, but all those carbohydrates are going to turn to sugar almost instantly when you start chewing on them. So that's why that is about the highest glycemic thing you could put in your body. In fact, saltine crackers or most cereals will turn to glucose faster than white table sugar will turn to glucose in your blood. I mean, that's very confusing to think that fat-free, sugar-free crackers actually have a bigger sugar effect on your body than eating things loaded with white table sugar. So, but here are the consequences of eating too much sugar or too much high glycemic food. Your cholesterol is going to be off, your triglycerides are going to be off. We see a lot more yeast and bacteria in the body and more inflammation in the joints. So people that have too high of sugars will have a lot of fatigue. They'll have that 2 or 3 a.m. wake up, insomnia. A lot of times they'll have some digestive problems. Almost always they'll have excess belly fat and low energy. And the big one we see is the cholesterol, which the drug companies aren't going to tell you about that. Their job is to lower cholesterol, but most people who I take down their glycemic index, their cholesterol regulates very quickly within 2 to 4 weeks. And so it's very important to understand that this sugar thing is very far-reaching in your body. Everything from your heart health to your waistline, okay? I'm just going to glance at my notes for a second. I don't want to leave anything out here. Well, we'll just talk about refined carbohydrates. So the biggest trouble that most healthy people get in is they eat too many refined carbohydrates. That means they take something like wheat or rice or corn, and the food manufacturers grind it down and they expose it to lots of air and lots of heat, and it basically voids the grain of all nutritional value. And then what happens is it becomes a powder, and then they glue it back together with stabilizers and emulsifiers and food. I forget the name of these things, but they glue it back together. It's like how a pasty kind of thing, when you look at your ingredients in food, it'll talk about these ingredients kind of usually at the end, that they stabilize, and they keep packaged foods sitting on a shelf a long time. The problem is, the minute you start chewing this stuff, it's going to turn to sugar. So we really want to watch out for refined carbohydrates. For instance, rice pasta is going to turn to sugar quicker than whole grain brown rice. Rice bread is going to turn to sugar quicker than whole grain brown rice. Same thing with wheat bread, let's say. Now, I'm not a big fan of wheat because I think the gluten is very suspicious nowadays. A lot of people need to take a break from all the wheat. But there's a sprouted bread called Ezekiel. There's no flour in it. It's a good hearty bread if you're okay with wheat. But most bread is turned into a flour and it's put on the shelf. The problem with that is it turns to sugar really quick versus the sprouted bread that doesn't. One doesn't have flour in it, one does, but they're both made of the exact same ingredients. It's just how refined, how milled down to flour has the food become. And so the more whole, the better. That is the idea with grains. Try to use your grains, which are pure carbohydrates. I mean, they have a little protein and fat often, but they're primarily carbohydrate. Make sure they're organic. If they're not organic, you're getting genetically modified food, which means you're eating Roundup. And that's why they genetically modify, so they could spray all these antifungals and pesticides on here. And it doesn't kill the crop, but then you ingest this stuff, and it mimics estrogen. It causes all kinds of problems, from heart disease to cancer, and at least that's what the suspicion is, and I'm on board with that, because we've never had more illness in our country, and we've probably never dumped more pesticides on genetically modified food. Sneaky sugars. Now, these are the ones that get you. There's sweeteners that I prefer. Like, my favorite sweetener is stevia, or pronounced stevia or stevia. It's kind of like tomatoes. Stevia is a plant. It's very sweet. It's not great in everything to me. Like, I don't want to put it in my organic coffee. I think it makes it bitter. But in teas and yogurts and baking, it's terrific. 0 calories, and it's not artificial in terms of it's a chemical. The artificial sweeteners are a disaster. They're very toxic, and they cause a mess. They actually disrupt your endocrine system as well. They mess up your palate for sweetness. Trust me, if you have to choose between artificial sweetener and organic cane sugar, go with the cane sugar every day. It's going to be much healthier in just about all cases. But I like stevia. Xylitol is a very interesting thing, used in very small amounts. Xylitol is terrific. It's very anti-cavity, and it's spelled XYL. So when you look it up, xylitol, I think it's XYLOTOL. But in your Club Body Restore pack, you've got some mints that were made of xylitol, and they're terrific. It tastes great. It's very sweet, and it's I believe it's more of a sugar alcohol. It's not an artificial sweetener. So those are my favorites. Down the list then would be things like raw honey. That's why I give you those little sticks of honey. Honey's terrific. You just got to use it in moderation and realize it's very sweet. There's a lot of sugar there. But used here and there, it's not a big deal. It's much healthier. We go down the list. I like maple syrup next. But when I sweeten things, I just don't go overboard. And I'll do a hybrid. When my kids, I use organic whipping cream for them, and I'll make it with a little CO2 cartridge, and that's their big treat. We'll do, once in a while, a dessert. We'll do strawberries with heavy whipping cream that's organic. I'll put mostly stevia in there and a little bit of maple syrup just to make it palatable. Just a few grams of sugar, right? And that's kind of my favorite thing to do with sweetening. The things you got to watch out for are the fructose-based things like agave nectar. That's very popular nowadays. It's inexpensive considering if you're comparing it to maple syrup, but it's pure fructose, and fructose is very stressful on the liver, which is stressful on the metabolism. In fact, most of my patients who are trying to be healthy and get their insulin working right and their heart healthy and lose some weight, fruit is the one thing that really gets them. Fructose is nearly as hard on the liver to digest as ethyl alcohol. So if you got a bottle of vodka and a bottle of orange juice, they're both nearly as stressful as each other on the liver. Now, of course, alcohol is a little bit worse, and you're allowed to drive a car after drinking a quart of orange juice, but I don't recommend drinking a quart of orange juice or vodka because they both have health negativities. It doesn't mean you can't have a glass of juice here and there, but remember, here and there is really, once or twice a month, not weekly or daily. And the problem with fructose is it's meant to be a dessert, but we refine it, take it out of its package, or we dry it, and it's just really, really concentrated sugar. Fructose is the sugar in fruit. And so an apple here and there, berries here and there, a pear here and there, those are terrific. Those you could have a couple, 2-3 times a week. But stay away from the juices, stay away from the oranges and bananas and pineapples and grapes, the things that are just pure sugar, unless it's a treat, it's a dessert. And like I said, here and there, once or twice a week, that's fine. Have what you want, but just be sensible. Don't think eating a bunch of that stuff is making you healthy. Our food pyramid's pretty backwards. We put all these grains on the bottom and fruits and vegetables, and really we should tip that thing upside down. Stay away from the grains, stay away from the fruit except for a treat, and use more bean protein and vegetable protein as our foundation. And we'll talk more about healthy fats and legumes and things like that. But as far as carbohydrates go, I tell people, look, if you want to turn your health around from a nutritional perspective, the best thing and the smartest thing you could do and the quickest thing you could do, trade your fruit and your grains in for beans. Beans, the magical fruit. But really, you have pintos and lentils and navy beans and garbanzo beans and kidney beans. There's so many kind of beans. My favorite kind of things for breakfast are a couple over easy eggs with lentils on a bed of kale or cabbage that's wilted. Those are the ways we start the day to become very healthy. The other thing with sugars is you won't want to start or end the day with grains or fruit. Or sugars, really, for that matter. You want to start the day with vegetables and beans and animal proteins. So, and if you want the other things, have them in the middle of the day. And your health, your metabolism, your heart, your thyroid, your liver will thank you for that. So all this to say, you're probably going to have some questions, and feel free to email me with questions. That's drshawnpatterson@gmail.com, or give a call. But the main thing I want to talk to you about, and this is the most important part of this whole message, is stress. When our body is stressed out, it's in fight or flight mode. If your brain perceives danger, and that may mean you're stressed right now, lots of emotional stress with relationships or finances or business or employees or employers or health, whatever it is, it kicks us into a fight or flight mode. And it might not even be now. It might be stress from 20 years ago that you've never recovered from, or you've never rehabilitated your fight or flight system, which is called the adrenal system. But when we're under tremendous stress, our brain does not have time or has any care to burn fat. It will burn glucose, sugar, and if it runs out of sugar in the blood from what you ate, it'll immediately start breaking down your muscle and bone for energy. And this is why so many people can't lose weight, why their blood pressure's up, why their blood sugar's up, why their minerals in their bones are down, and why they're anxious and can't sleep at night and can't digest, because we're not meant to stay in this low-level fight or flight. Now I'm going to make a whole nother video and teaching on the low-level fight or flight, because what triggers that is very complicating, and there's 6 kinds of stresses that I've learned can trigger that. Emotional, structural, allergy sensitivities, toxicity, electromagnetic pollution, and your food. And so we have to really identify. And that's why I do a free evaluation for patients who have never been in, or prospective patients, because you got to know what's stressing your body out to do something about it. But the take home about sugar is, when your body's in stress mode, it's going to crave a ton of sugar, it's going to break down your own muscle for sugar, and you're not going to burn any fat. That is going to lead to a body that's chronically worn out, that can't sleep, can't repair, and it's going to have lots of aches and pains. So if this is you, aches and pains, can't sleep great, can't digest great, low energy, and you're always craving sugar. Remember, when I say sugar, that's carbohydrate, that's fruit, that's alcohol, it's not just sugar. Then this is probably you. Fight or flight. The last thing I just want to leave you with, things like dark chocolate, go really, really dark, go organic, 70, 80, I prefer 80 to 85 and up. Sometimes you can even find 90%, 92% dark chocolate. It's a great natural stimulant. I'm talking little piece here, not chocolate bar. I'll make a bar this big last about a month. But when I'm really needing a little pick-me-up, I'll just break off a little corner of that thing, and it's like having a shot of espresso. Great antioxidants. Chocolate is not unhealthy, but most people are eating milk chocolate, which is like 40, 60%. It's mostly sugar and soy, and it's just junk. So make sure you're getting organic on your dark chocolate. And it's not a license to eat it every day, but here and there when you need a pick-me-up. Dried fruits, they're great to sweeten things with. I'll use a handful of raisins to sweeten a whole salad, but I won't sit down and eat a box of raisins. I'll use honey to sweeten something I'm baking. or that whipping cream or maple syrup, but I won't ever pour maple syrup on my pancakes. I just think that's just way too much, too concentrated. But there's lots of tricks. One of my favorite books that talks about sugars and gives great recipes, and I'll actually promote it. He's a friend of mine. His name is Dr. Joshua Axe, and it's called The Real Food Diet Cookbook. And let me know if you want one of those. I could buy them by the bulk, and I get a really good price. I think they're $15 to $20 each, and they're quite a bit more on Amazon. Anyway, I'd love to be a resource of information for you, but listen, here's the take-home, here's the deeper, more important meaning here. If your body's misbehaving, okay, you gotta check your glucose, your fasted glucose. That is your blood sugar first thing in the morning. In fact, nowadays the glucose test kits are so inexpensive. I got one for $8 on Amazon. Patients routinely get them for $12 or $15 at the local pharmacies. It's a glucose meter that comes with some test strips and a little lance, and you prick your finger, and no, you don't bleed like a sieve, and it's not that bad. I'm a big baby. I wince before it even clicks, and then I realize it actually doesn't hurt. And you just put that little drop of blood on, and I'll do that 3 mornings in a row, and I'll look at my morning glucose, my blood sugar when I wake up. Because if that number's over 80, you have problems. If it's over 90, you have severe problems, boiling and starting. And if it's over 100, we got to talk. You're in a lot of trouble. But that could be one of the primary reasons you can't sleep right. You have aches and pains all over your body, and that you can't lose any weight, low energy, all those things. And in most of the doctors in our healthcare system, they're going to talk to you about, oh, it's just arthritis, it's old age, it's this thing called insomnia, depression, here's your meds. Meds will not fix these problems. Even though the AMA says that drugs cure diseases and healthy things can't, like food and supplements, in my opinion, that's completely backwards. Probably yours too. So anyway, I hope this was valuable information. I'm going to let you go. Please respond with your questions or concerns. Dr. Sean Patterson at gmail.com, DRSEAN, PATTERSON at gmail.com. If you're watching this because a friend sent this to you, as a courtesy, you're always welcome to come into my office for a free consultation where we can evaluate your fight or flight response and make sure your body's behaving the way it's supposed to. I am in the art of giving people hope through second chances and second opinions, and I'm happy to be helped. Have a great day. Thanks so much for watching this, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.